To order scheduled January 9th. January 9th, 2003 zoning board of appeals.
January 12th.
Oh, sorry, January 12th. Sorry, I was reading the staff report. January 12th, 2003 zoning board of appeals meeting. Would someone approve the agenda as drafted?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And just to note, Michael O'Meara is present for the meeting. He's joining us via Zoom. What? Yeah. So,
Hi, Michael.
yeah. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
So the minutes from December 8th, 2022, staff recommended approval. I read them over. I didn't have any issues. Did anyone have any changes or corrections or comments on the minutes? No. Yeah. No. Okay. Would someone make a motion to approve the minutes from December 8th, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Great. So now we're going to move on to old business. Our first matter is continued or asked to continue to February 9th. We have a bunch of continuances. Can we just do one motion? Okay, so under old business, request to continue, we have 37-21, 8 Bank Street, 0922, 50 Weweeder. Can I do new business as well, or do I need? Okay. And under new business, we have 1022 for Washington Avenue, 19-22, 11A Meadow Lane, and 17-22, 16 Vesper Lane. And that's it. So would someone make a motion to continue all of those to the February 9th, 2023 meeting? Lisa makes the meeting. Would someone second?
Second.
Lisa seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes.
Madam Chair, can we just note for the record that I abstained on
50 Weweeder.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So noted. Okay, so let's start with 18-22 Jeff McDermott et al., 32 Monomoy Road, Anderson and Krager presenting. On
Good
Zoom.
afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Nina Pickering Cook, again, I think I'm a familiar sight at this point. I represent the appellants who are all abutters or abutters to abutters within 300 feet of 32 Monomoy Road. To be clear, those individuals are Jeff McDermott, Matthew Westfall, Stephen Ketchman, Bob and Deborah Landreth, and Mark Wilmot. Now, 32 Monomoy Road is a 6-bedroom, 5.5 bathroom, single-family home that's located in the Lug 1 district. The property is used exclusively as a short-term rental. It's advertised on multiple luxury vacation rental websites with prices ranging from $1,875 to $5,000 per night. Now, like past short-term rental decisions, the commissioner has determined that the use of the property at 32 Monomoy does not violate the Nantucket zoning bylaws despite its location within a residential district. Now, unlike past decisions, however, this property has no personal residential use by its owner or a long-term resident. The only use of this property is as a business investment by the Copley Group through an LLC. And my clients have suffered harms at the hands of the short-term renters at 32 Monomoy. I think you will hear quite a bit from them this afternoon describing what that harm is. I know that this board in the past has questioned whether the use of residential property by short-term renters is any different than the use by others in the neighborhood. And I think you will hear some very compelling stories from my clients about just how different that is. I will first focus on the legal framework here and do that quickly, as you've heard me make the argument before, and then I would love for you to hear from them. Now, the owner's use of the property here is commercial. No one lives at the property. No one rents the property for more than 30 days at a time. It is a full-time short-term rental owned by the Copley Group. Now, 2 different appellate level courts at this point have reviewed similar cases and determined that properties that charge these weekly rental rates via contracts between third parties is an inherent commercial transaction, and thus it's not permitted in a residential district. Now, that is despite the argument that I expect the owners to make here, which is the use by the renters is inherently residential because they're sleeping there and eating there. That is an argument that the appellate courts have considered, and they've rejected that and said that is not what is meant by residential use in a residential district under zoning bylaws adopted under Chapter 40A, which Nantucket's is. Now, although those cases are from different towns, given that they are appellate level decisions, the pronouncement of law that short-term rentals of this kind are inherently commercial is no less binding on Nantucket. Any belief that it doesn't apply to Nantucket is just flat wrong as a matter of law. Now, there has been some discussion that because people have always rented houses on Nantucket, it's a traditional residential use here, and the courts may view that differently than other towns. That's not true, and there's no evidence for that in the law. Some rentals have certainly always been part of home ownership in Nantucket, but this full-time ownership of properties as part of an investment portfolio that has no personal use of the property at all is a relatively new phenomenon. We have data that proves the proliferation of these commercial short-term rentals has really occurred in the last 10 or so years. Nor is this an accessory use. It is different than the Ward and the Great case that was in front of you, where there is some personal use of the property, and they argue the renting is accessory to that personal use. There is no primary use of this property by the owner. The use of the property by the owner is as a commercial investment. So this cannot be a valid accessory use either. Now, more generally, I understand that this board believes that the zoning of short-term rentals is a policy question that's more appropriate for town meeting to handle. I agree with you, and that is true if you were talking about how the town wants to handle or regulate short-term rentals going forward. Until then, however, this board is charged with enforcing the current zoning bylaw. And as it stands now, the binding case law has determined that short-term rentals are commercial and not residential under zoning bylaws like Nantucket's. Finally, I do want to make a note about Article 39, the registry from Nantucket's last town meeting. There's an argument made in the memo provided by the Copley Group that indicates somehow Article 39 blessed the use or codified or legalized the use of short-term rentals in residential districts. That's not true and kind of ridiculous when viewed in context of the fact that there was a zoning article that sought to explicitly legalize short-term rentals in residential districts, and that was not voted on at town meeting. Town meeting voters decided not to decide that at that very same town meeting. So I think that arguing Article 39 somehow legalizes residential short-term rentals in residential zones stretches a bit too far. Now, I believe a number of my clients are here, and I would like the board to hear from them as part of our presentation in chief. I would start, if he is there and available, with Matthew Westfall of 30 Monomoy Road. If he could be promoted.
I just promoted him just a minute.
Okay, very good. Thank you for the promotion. Chair McCarthy and members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my family's experiences with the commercial short-term rental located at 32 Monomoy in our neighborhood. As background, I am an urban planner and former Peace Corps volunteer, retired from my international development career and the homeowner of 30 Monomoy Road. I am a voting resident of Nantucket, and our home in Monomoy serves as our primary U.S. residence. While we split our time overseas, we live in Monomoy for a large percentage of the off-season, which serves as an oasis and refuge for our family. Our home directly abuts 32 Monomoy. My observations on the impacts of the commercial short-term rental at 32 Monomoy are based on our off-season time on the property, as we rent our home during the high season to several repeat multi-generational families who typically come back year after year. Worth noting, our guests who are well-behaved and vetted rent multiple weeks at a time and have not been the source of any complaints whatsoever. As this is our primary home, and as we care deeply about our community, we are hands-on with this rental process, ensuring that it is properly managed and that with the well-being of our community always coming first. The Copley Group's full-time commercial short rental at 32 Monomoy is fundamentally different and has brought nothing but trouble to Monomoy and particularly to abutters, as I will explain. Following the Copley Group Corporation's acquisition of the property, and after they began renting the property as a short-term rental full-time in 2016, we have encountered problems ranging from criminal trespass, an illegal cutting of our trees, excessive noise, raucous parties, inebriated Fagawi weekend parties, and in one instance, a house party with over 200 visibly underage kids with alcohol, to which the Nantucket police were summoned to both break up the gathering and manage the scores of cars parked along Monomoy Road. Note, these events are only what we have personally witnessed during the shoulder and off seasons, not at the height of the property's commercial short-term rental season. Let me give you some factual details. Our first encounter with 32 Monomoy was an incident of illegal trespass sometime in the winter or spring of 2016, several months after the Copley Group's purchase of the property, by their landscapers who illegally topped 3 of our mature choke cherry trees. They did this apparently to open up water views from the STR's master bedroom. This illegal incursion required advanced planning, a directive from the property owners, climbing over our pool fencing, trespassing 10 feet into our yard, engaging ladders and a chainsaw, and violently topping the full crowns of 3 mature trees, estimated to be 15 to 20 years old each. I can provide you with images that document the damage we incurred on our property. In response to this trespassing, we contacted our island-based real estate attorney, Bill Hunter, who requested we confirm the location of the trees through a local survey and assess the scope of damage with our landscape architect. This baseline information allowed us to issue a demand letter to the Copley Group to cover the costs of the harm we incurred. At the time, we sought professionally calculated compensation in the amount of just over $27,000 to cover the damage caused by this criminal trespass, as well as the related legal, survey, and expert arborist expenses. Rather than address the issue in any sensible or fair way, the Copley Group engaged their high-priced Boston-based criminal defense attorney, Jim Merberg, to refute our claims, who, over 3 months of wrangling and delay, dismissed the harm of the tree topping as, quote, de minimis, a trifling matter of no importance, while never denying the illegal act of trespassing or cutting our trees. With Copley refusing to take responsibility for their actions, and making no effort to try to communicate with us, we were left with the only option of pursuing expensive litigation. Given the anticipated high cost of such litigation, estimated to be well over $100,000, and taking into the account our limited financial resources as a working family, and with our 3 daughters either in or entering college at the time, in consultation with our attorney, we made the difficult decision to not pursue the matter further. With this, however, the Copley Group revealed their hand as to the kind of neighbor they intended to be: self-serving, litigious, and unwilling to behave with any basic sense of decency toward their neighbors, the Monomoy community, or our fragile island environment. We did not receive so much as an apology. In fact, after the illegal cutting by the Copley Group, the very next spring, we hired our own landscaper, Vic Farentella, to install approximately $13,000 worth of new perimeter deer fencing and privet hedges to delineate our property and boundaries and forestall any further incursions and illegal cutting of our trees, rather than engage in another expensive legal fight. I would be happy to share our demand letter to Norman Levinson, president of the Copley Group, dated 20 October 2016, in relation to this incident. Another well-documented incident occurred over Fagawi weekend, 26 to 29 May 2018, when a 15-individual bachelor's party, and to their credit, the college-age renters came to warn us beforehand that it might get noisy, degenerated into a massive 2-day raucous house party with clear signs of underage drinking and presumably drunk driving. On the second night, the chaos apparently was fueled by having one of the infamous Nominee beach parties relocated to 32 Monomoy due to bad weather. We all know about those. Negatively affected as my family and I were at the time, on 31 May 2018, I complained by email to the property manager, whose address I found listed online, only to receive an empty apology in return. She justified the situation by claiming the tenants had told her they had no plans for any parties, that the Nantucket police had not contacted her, implying that it was not serious, and that she had driven by the property several times over the weekend and everything looked fine from the outside. Still very much aggrieved, I then opted to write a polite but firm, fact-based letter of complaint directly to the Copley Group's president and CEO, Norman Levinson, and his son, Benjamin, their director of operations, assuming they would care about the incident, if only from the perspective that it may have resulted in damage to their own property. Specifically, I spelled out the details of this incident at 32 Monomoy, and I quote, "Starting early Friday, carloads of youth were being dropped off and or driving to the property with cases of beer and liquor in hand and parking along both sides of the street. By my count, well over 200 plus young guests were on the property throughout Friday and Saturday, both obviously underage and heavily drinking, and all raucously partying. Every deck was overloaded with kids, with crowds in the back, side, and front yards, and with some spilling into the street. Unfortunately, all your neighbors had to deal with this highly disruptive and very loud music, hooting and hollering and partying throughout both nights. This was all the more dismaying to me, given the limited time I actually get to spend on our property for much needed family rest and relaxation. On Saturday morning, I was tasked with cleaning up beer cans, a shoe, and a light bulb that were launched by your inebriated guests from the roof deck toward our pool. Please note, more than several neighbors called in complaints to Nantucket Police, which is a matter of public record. To avoid a recurrence of these problems in the future, I kindly request that you take steps to better vet your rental guests and institute some sort of procedure to monitor your guests once they arrive. We cannot have this sort of nonsense in Monomoy. It does not belong here," unquote. Unfortunately, my letter was ignored and I received no response. Again, confirmation to me that the Copley Group's senior management, in my view, had and has zero intention of acting responsibly with respect to their corporate short-term rental in Monomoy and its deleterious impacts on our neighborhood. I am happy to share my letter of complaint to the Copley Group dated 31 May 2018 with the ZBA board. While there have been other incidents we have surely missed, as we do not have the ability to monitor the impacts of the Copley Group's STR on a full-time basis, there is ample evidence of recurring irresponsible behaviors by its renters, exacerbated by the soulless nature of its absentee corporate ownership and a lack of concern over the well-being of our community. I know this as a fact, as every spring and fall, year in and year out, since the operation of this corporate STR began in 2016, I have been relegated to getting on my hands and knees to clean up discarded bottles, debris, and an eclectic array of items ranging from footwear to glassware to deck furniture that has been launched into our yard and toward our pool from the decks and roof walk of the Copley Group's property, presumably by inebriated renters who apparently find it sport in trying to reach our pool with whatever objects are in hand or nearby. Most recently, this last spring in 2022, the debris I found launched into our yard included a number of carved Halloween pumpkins and associated plastic decor, presumably from October, approximately 12 empty and full Bud Light beer cans, and several empty wine glass bottles, all dumped over our fence and scattered across our landscaping. You might ask, why would Copley's short-term renters repeatedly feel compelled to throw trash, waste, and debris into our yard when on the face of it, it makes no sense? The best we can fathom is that the property is misrepresented on the Copley website, which falsely depicts ample space using wide-angle photography and refers to, quote, water views, quote, a yard, quote, and an outdoor patio in its description. Yet when Copley's short-term renters actually arrive on the property and discover it has no views and is tightly squeezed on a tiny 0.15 of an acre parcel in a Lug 1 zone, I should add, and lacks a pool and any space that can reasonably be called a yard, it incites their ire. Somehow our pool on a larger contiguous property on 0.97 of an acre becomes the drunken focus of these angry and ill-bred renters. That's our best guess. The above represents the most egregious incidents, but we also have to deal with more other routine issues on a nearly continuous basis, which include a steady stream of new cars and groups arriving on the property, all unknown and unvetted for periods as short as a few days over a weekend. As these short-term renters don't know the neighborhood and don't know the rules in play, we have found children running through our yard who think it somehow comprises part of the Copley property. At least once, as far as we know, we have had unattended children enter through our security gates to visit our pool, an extremely dangerous situation that poses risk to all involved. Copley's lawn maintenance team, operating without homeowners' oversight, has been a recurring headache as well, as they regularly use noisy gas-powered leaf blowers and shunt all their debris into our yard. And then off-season, when the tempo of the Copley Group's corporate STR slows, it's worth noting that this business property sits completely unattended, a sad and soulless structure that adds no life, no sense of security or neighborhoodliness to our community. This is in stark contrast to many other homes surrounding us, which are occupied by a mix of full-time and seasonal neighbors, all of which has dramatically increased during the off-season due to the pandemic. In fact, most residents can stroll along Monomoy Road and recall the names of their neighbors, many of them friends. We have a robust civic association that brings together the community several times a year and is actively working to tackle both community and island-wide issues. We are a cohesive and organized community that cares about the island. Yet for the business at 32 Monomoy, whose owners have never bothered to join our community association, the property remains a nameless corporate entity operated by an off-island corporate group led by business people we do not know and have never met. Left to research for any information online, it comes with some surprise and alarm that we find the Copley Group receives an avalanche of scathing reviews. For example, a dismal 1.5 star average review on Yelp for their Boston-based property empire, with renters complaining about rats, roaches, unattended leaks, decrepit and dangerous conditions, and the overall non-responsiveness by Copley's management. While we don't yet have rats and roaches in Monomoy, as we have highlighted, we have similarly experienced the non-responsiveness by Copley to our complaints. I closed with this. My family and I are indeed aggrieved parties, and we offer clear and compelling factual evidence that shows how our property rights have been harmed and will continue to be harmed unless this commercial STR is ordered to cease operations by the ZBA.
Thank you. Are there any more neighbors that want to speak at this time?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have Bob Landreth with his hand up. I'll let him speak.
Okay. Can you say his last name again?
Landreth.
Mr. Landrick, can you, the first neighbor gave a lot of information, and if you can limit your comments to anything additional and new that were not presented thus far, that would be very helpful. So if there's anything in addition to the concerns that were brought up by the prior neighbor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Bob Landreth. We own the property at 4 Berkeley Avenue, which is almost a direct abutter to 32 Monomoy. We have owned our property for 36 years. And our daughter and son-in-law, who have recently purchased a business on Nantucket, are now living in the house full time with their 2 young children. I'll be brief here. First of all, we support the comments submitted by our neighbor, Mr. Westfall. Secondly, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me that the zoning bylaw is unambiguous and clearly prohibits commercial property in residential neighborhoods. It seems like it's a fairly black and white situation. I just have a couple of questions, or I guess this first one is a comment, but if this type of commercial ownership is allowed to continue, how long will it be before 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 homes is a commercial short-term rental? And what kind of neighborhoods are we going to have at that point in time? And then I'd like to ask the board a question, because to me, this is really what we're talking about here.
So
Why
at
should
this point, I'd ask you to hold your questions, because we haven't heard from the other side yet. So I would put that under public comment. So
Well, I
right
guess
at this,
it's as much an observation as a question, but whatever you say.
at this point, I'd just like to hear any new information about that your attorney was referring to when she made her presentation, and then we'll hear from the if there's a representative from Copley Group. I'd like to hear from the building commissioner, and then we will circle back and have public comment. And so you could ask any questions at that time, but at this time, I'm just asking for any additional information that as to what your attorney alluded to, that she had the neighbors or abutters or interested parties who were going to talk about the harm that they had exhibited. So if the first homeowner who gave a very detailed description of his opinion, if there's not anything additional to that, then I'd like to move on and let if a representative from the Copley Group speak.
Madam Chair, can we make sure that Jeff McDermott, Steve Ketchum, and Mark Wilmot are not on and do not also want to be heard?
Yeah, we can circle back for public. I just don't want to.
It's not public comment. They're my clients.
So again, if it's new information or something that's adding to what your first client said, then yes, but I don't want to rehash the same thing over and over. Not because it's not important, and their voices should be heard, but just for the time purposes.
I understand. I can't see whether they're on or not, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to describe their experiences if they're on.
Okay, I can't see that either. So let me
I'm
just
sorry,
find
Nina,
out.
what were the names?
Jeff McDermott, Steve Ketchum, or Mark Wilmot.
Okay. Nina, did you hear that? Mark Wilmot is sitting in the audience.
Great. If Mark wants to speak, he can at this point, or
Just if you'll have to go to the mic and just, that's okay. Just identify yourself for the minutes and then.
My name is Mark Wilmot and I reside at 33 Monomoy Road. In terms of what the board is looking for, I would only say that all the things that have been mentioned are an issue for us who abut 32.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mark. With that, I know we do have some folks from the public who want to speak who will wait till the public comment portion.
Okay. Okay. So Nina, then does that conclude your presentation at this time?
Yes.
Okay. So seeing that Nina is done, is there anyone from Cobley Group who is in the audience or going to present or on Zoom?
I have John Huffman. If you'll allow him
Okay.
to speak, I can.
I think let's hear from Paul Murphy first and then hear from, does that make sense? And then hear from the appellee.
So for the record, Paul Murphy, Building Commissioner for the town of Nantucket. I know the board's well aware of my position on this matter. 32 Monomoy Road being used as a short-term rental doesn't violate the zoning code. It's still a residential use, and that's why I declined to take enforcement action against the property owner.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for the building commissioner at this time? No, seeing none. Okay. Would you just stay in the audience in case we do? Thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So if you want to promote or give access to the attorney for.
Attorney Hoffman, you may go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you and see you, so hopefully that was working both ways. Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is John Hoffman. I'm an attorney with Gilman, McLaughlin and Hanrahan. We represent the property owner here, Copley Monomoy LLC. They are the owner of the property at issue at 32 Monomoy Road. We submitted a memo, which I see has been provided to you. Hopefully you've read that. It makes the points that we've made before and you've heard before. And I'll just briefly summarize those points now to refresh your memory and point out a few specific things to this case. As we noted, we think the board should deny this appeal and affirm Mr. Murphy's decision for multiple reasons. One is because it's exactly what this board has done before on at least 3 prior occasions. The board should be consistent with its decisions in light of Mr. Murphy's statement that as he just made and repeated, the operation of the private home as a short-term rental does not violate the bylaws. It's a private residential use. So by definition is not commercial. That is the opinion that is longstanding in your decisions for several years now with these issues. So we would reiterate that. That's consistent with another point that's also been made by others, the longstanding tradition and history of short-term rentals by people who own property on Nantucket. That's been mentioned before. You're familiar with that. Nantucket is unique. It's a unique situation, a unique place. Part of that uniqueness is the tourism industry, a vibrant, prominent tourism industry. And as you know and have been told, short-term rentals play a vital role, a key part of that industry. And without short-term rentals, the tourism industry would suffer greatly. It's been said before, and there's data, I believe, that you've been provided that without short-term rentals, there simply would not be enough accommodation, hotel rooms during the high season in the summer. So that tradition and history is relevant. And that segues into the point that Attorney Pickering Cook made with regard to the SJC case and her references to the law. the SJC case, which has been discussed here before, and it's discussed in the papers, Stiller versus in the Linfield case. Linfield is distinct, as has been noted. And as the SJC said in footnote 19, which we cite in our memo, which Attorney Pickering Cook has really never addressed, despite the language that helps her case. In that case, the SJC wisely said this with a caveat that says other towns are different. Other towns and cities will have different bylaws, and that's right, and that's appropriate, and that's the case here. And in light of that, speaking to that specifically is another thing that Attorney Pickering Cook mentioned, the various articles that have been rejected, or adopted by Nantucket Town Meeting in the last few years. We think they're relevant. I disagree with Attorney Pickering Cook's dismissal of them. We think it's definitely relevant, and it's specifically in line with the SJC's comment in its case that towns can do different things. Nantucket has done its own thing with how it treats these under the bylaw, its long history and tradition. And the prior decisions of this board, totally consistent on the bylaw, recognizing that tradition in its prior decisions, including a decision with a similar property that we also handled and that this board decided, the Damon or Act Now case from, which was number 0221. Just one moment to double check here. With regard to what Mr. Westfall said, I believe he was the landowner that testified earlier. He himself admitted and acknowledged that he rents out his own house as a short-term rental. And so I think there we're seeing just how common and normal short-term rental use for property owners is. People who own it, investment properties like this, it has a long-standing history on Nantucket for good reasons, for the tourism industry. And for all those reasons, the meaning of the bylaw as it's written, as it's been interpreted by this board's own decisions, the staff reports note the board's role and recognizing the role of town meeting and basic democracy. The board should be mindful of the recent votes, rejection of Article 90, sponsored by Act Now in 2021, and more recently in 2022, the adoption of Article 39, which set up STR registration, which I guess we can quibble with Attorney Pickering Cook on what exactly that means and their interrelationship with the other articles that were essentially deferred and sent to a study group. I believe that study group is ongoing and doing its work. And while that's happening, that will, in the future, that will determine where we are, setting up regulations. The registration system has been approved. This is a legal use of property. It has been, it still is. Everyone has agreed, the commissioner, your board yourself. We would ask you to maintain that, affirm the building commissioner's decision, and deny this appeal as you've done on others. I believe that is all I have for now, and rest on the papers. And if there's any other questions, obviously, I'll answer those now, but that's it for the Copley Monomoy LLC in this matter.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a question, Jim?
Yeah. Can you just explain the standing issue in aggrieved party that you explained in your memo? Could you just kind of elaborate on that?
Is that addressed to me?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure who he was speaking to. We raised this issue the first time around in the Damon case. We noted that standing is important even at this stage. It is a requirement. The board didn't necessarily grapple with it fully at the time, moved past it and decided separately. We've included the standing arguments because we think they are still relevant. We're not waiving them. Basically, a party that comes before a court, or in this case, the board, needs to show aggrievement. We've set out the legal tests in some legalese in the memo. I'm not going to repeat it exactly verbatim. It's there. It's relatively straightforward. It's well established. We do maintain that neighbors, such as the appellants here, do have to maintain standing at this level. The statute makes that clear and the cases make that clear. And then depending on what happens at the court, in court is where we usually deal with standing more in detail. They would also have to prove standing basically to get in the door to make their arguments. Based on what was submitted in writing, in this case, the appeal by the attorneys, we've characterized it as a vague reference to harm. They alleged harm at the time. Excuse me, on the papers, they didn't provide any details. So the standing argument seemed relevant. In terms of harm, it was vague. It was de minimis. There was no details. Obviously, Mr. Westfall has alleged some more details now. So based on that, in terms of being abutters, plus with some of those details, he may well have standing for purposes of this board's consideration. It doesn't change the fact that he has standing. It just means the board sort of considers the merits or takes it into consideration as they've done in the prior cases. I don't believe the cases we've been involved in or that Attorney Pickering Cook has been involved in, the board ever really addressed standing face on, head on, or based a denial of an appeal on standing. They certainly could under the law. It seems to be the practice of this board, based on its own practice or advice of town council, that they kind of skipped past standing a bit and decided, I guess, on other points, which there are ample grounds for denying their appeal and upholding the building commissioner. The language of the bylaw, the long tradition, all of that's been mentioned already. And in other cases, those decisions were attached to the staff report for the December hearing date, which this case was not heard. It was continued to January. In any event, the staff noted that those decisions had been decided. In any event, does that address the standing concern of the board member?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. Does anyone else on the board have any questions for either party? No. Okay, so is there anyone else in the audience present who wanted to speak? No. Okay, so then we can move to the people who are on the Zoom. And I just wanted to note, sorry, the sitting board for this, Lisa is not obviously sitting and Michael Mara is not sitting on this one. So it's the board at the table that's voting. Okay.
Hale Everett's.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity and for allowing me to pose a question. My name is Hale Everett. I reside at 46 Monomoy Road. I'm a member of the Monomoy Civic Association. My question is for Commissioner Murphy. It seems clear that this is not an owner-occupied home. It seems clear that a business activity is being run out of the home. And so therefore, I wonder why this doesn't qualify as a business activity conducted as an accessory use, in which case it does not meet the standard of home occupation. It seems pretty clear that this is clearly a for-profit business run out of the home. And to say that just because people sleep and eat there is really obfuscating the actual use and intention of the home.
Do you want to address that? Would you like,
Thank you. It's still a residential use. People, it's the activity is no different than anybody else occupying a home, sleeping, eating, and enjoying themselves there. So, my position on that is unchanged, and I don't believe it's a commercial use. So, yeah, thank you.
does that conclude your questions?
Yeah, I don't think it really satisfies it, but it concludes it. Thank you.
The next person.
Francie Neely, you may go ahead. Francine Neely.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
yes, sorry, I was muted. Hi, yes, I am Francine Neely. I'm a member of the Monomoy Civic Association, and I have lived in Monomoy on 5 Salt Marsh Road or the house above it since 1999. I am passionate about our neighborhood. I bought in part into that neighborhood because it is residential only. That was very important to my acquisition decision. Contrary to Mr. Hoffman's and Copley's assertion to this zoning board, this matter is absolutely not identical to the board's prior decisions. To my knowledge, you have never considered a property that is incontestably being used solely for short-term rental purposes. That is the case and is not denied by Mr. Hoffman or Copley. To argue that that is residential turns common sense on its head. To use that rationale, one could build a hotel there and claim it is residential. That is false. Mr. Hoffman, Copley's lawyer, mentioned democracy. If democracy matters, the Monomoy neighborhood has clearly spoken en masse. It opposes purely commercial short-term rentals in its residential-only neighborhood. It has made that view manifest in a unanimous vote in August of this past year at a Monomoy Civic Association meeting and in a survey that was conducted earlier last year. Purely commercial short-term rentals like this erode the fabric of a neighborhood. I'll tell you what I myself have observed, and I'm not in a butter or in a butter of a butter, but I love my neighborhood. I walk in my neighborhood. I can go down the street and tell you who lives in each house, whether or not they're there at the time. And when I look at the Copley house at 32 Monomoy, I often am greeted with giant Jeep rental cars on the grassy verge outside the property boundaries, really, that just are like announcing renters are here, prominently displayed for much of the summer. And finally, and forgive my cold, I think it is very inequitable to place a burden on a neighborhood to become vigilantes, enlisting the aid of an already overburdened, overtaxed law enforcement to make renters be respectful of the neighborhood. If you complain, you're labeled as a nag or a sourpuss. And if you don't complain, then you have the Copley's lawyer saying, see no harm, no foul. Well, today you have heard expressly the harm that was caused by Mr. Westfall and his property, harm that was absolutely dismissed by the Copley company. I hope that we don't resort to just having the police have to monitor these unfortunate situations. And then final comment, there's always the argument by the Mr. Hoffmans of the world that, oh my heavens, if you prevent this, you will be hurting tourism in Nantucket. Our island is already overtaxed with tourism. We cannot get restaurant reservations. We cannot get service providers with alacrity because they have too much business. And I guarantee you the Copley has a concierge service that gobbles up restaurant reservations like crazy. So I would ask this board to use its common sense, its rationale, and be fair to the Monomoy neighborhood. Just because you have Copley in Boston with Boston lawyers, please do not let them override the interests of the Monomoy residential only neighborhood. And with that, I conclude and I thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who?
Stephen Ketchum, you may go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Steve Ketchum. Can you all hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also a member of the Monomoy Civic Association. I have the pleasure of living right next door at 34 Monomoy Road. So I look into their yard, and as those of you who are familiar with the area know how close the houses tend to be in Monomoy. My family and I spend the better part of July and August in Nantucket, which we love. I estimate that at least every other week, so 50% of the rental weeks, I'm forced to ask one of the renters to turn down music or otherwise keep sound down. In some cases, they're responsive, and in other cases, they're not. Unfortunately, I've had to call the police on more than one occasion. I feel strongly that this should not be the job of the Nantucket police. I've cleaned up their trash from parties, and not just trash that ends up being thrown into my yard from their yard, but trash on the street because as other people from the association and from the neighborhood have spoken, we care a great deal about Monomoy, and we're respectful of each other, especially those of us who are full-time residents, at least during summer. I've been forced to walk over to the house to ask tenants, the short-term tenants, to remove vehicles from my property. I think maybe the most stark example of the frustration that I've had over the last several years is several years ago, I had an 80th birthday party for my mother. My three siblings and their children were all there staying at our house. We had a catered, and as you can imagine, quite quiet birthday party just for family. I noticed with horror as we started to ready for cocktails and then dinner that there were 25 people on the deck next door with the music blaring, and I had to implore them a number of times to quiet the music down, and it was incredibly disruptive and marred, frankly, what would have been an otherwise quiet and lovely and meaningful event. So it is. This is an unyielding issue for me and for the rest of the neighbors, and I just think it's unacceptable. I could not agree more with what other members of the Civic Association said, but that's my 5 cents.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else?
Not seeing any other hands raised,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
So does anyone on the board have any points of discussion they want to make? No. Okay. Is there anyone else? I don't think there's anyone here in the audience to speak. Is there anyone on the Zoom who has a hand up that wanted to get anything else in before we?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So if we don't have any additional questions or comments, we have heard this, pardon me. We've had this type of appeal before us before. We've been consistent in our decision-making. Does anyone want to make a motion for us to vote on at this time? I can make the motion. Okay. So I would make a motion to deny the appeal and affirm the building commissioner's decision.
Second.
Okay, so do we need to do roll since we have people on Zoom? No one's voting on Zoom, but because there are people participating by Zoom, let's just do it just in case. Okay.
Is it Michael participating?
He's on the Zoom, but he's
Oh,
not
okay.
sitting on this application. So Mark, I will start with you. Your vote on the proposed motion to deny the appeal and affirm the building commissioner's decision.
I vote aye.
Elisa?
Aye.
Susan, myself, aye.
Aye.
John says aye, and Jim Mondani.
Aye.
Okay, so that is unanimous. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And we will move on to the next application. I just want to take a minute to organize the papers I have in front of me, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, everyone, for your time today. Okay, so we can move on. Is Mr. Cohen on? I think is that our next one? Yes. Okay, so this is starts in page 134 of your packet. The application is 20-22 Stephen L. Cohen and Christopher P. Choma, trustees of 29 Monomoy Road Nominee Trust. Attorney Steve Cohen is presenting. And hold on. So sorry, Steve. Is everyone sitting on this at this point, or does anyone have a conflict? No. Okay. Okay. All right, Stephen, you have the floor.
Sure, Madam Chair, thank you, members. I like to usually start by saying that my applications are easy and clear, but this one is not, so I'll skip that this time. But I'll try to reduce it to something that is. The Chomas own a property at 29 Monomoy Road, and behind that property is the former Orleans Avenue, which has been taken by the town 7 years ago under eminent domain under the yard sale program. Behind Orleans Avenue is a property that's 14 Brewster Road that's owned by the Russells. The Russells have an excessive amount of land compared to their use, and the Chomas would like to buy some of that land. And they have an agreement to do that. The problem is the paper road, or now the land taken by the town in between them, makes it difficult, makes it impossible to have that land be contiguous, because my client's land and the Russ's land is interrupted by the former Orleans Avenue. So my client has been waiting for 7 years for this yard sale to move along, and it hasn't, primarily because the yard sale program, I think, while extremely successful, has somewhat overwhelmed the town by its success, and also the staffing and other needs that it's gone through. And I think you guys know this, that there's been some staffing changes on this issue, and it's been put on hold a few times. And I don't know specifically why this one has taken so long, but it is been held up. So what my client is asking for is zoning relief to allow that if they acquire the land from the Russells, that they would then be able to build consistent with the ground cover that they would have if they also had the yard sale land, subject to acquiring that land in the future. And also, so while they would be temporarily non-compliant with ground cover, they would actually be compliant once the yard sale was completed. So that's essentially the request, is for a temporary variance to allow for the ground cover overage, which would be cured under the yard sale program.
Is there a proposed, this is the proposed plan? Stephen, the proposed plan is on 139 then, page 139?
I don't know what page it's on, but yeah, it shows.
It's a Bracken plan?
Yeah,
Concept
that's
plan of land.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to get my, so we don't have an overall. Okay,
So
Are
if
they-
you look at 141, you can see Orleans Road, the yard sale, and you can see the private sale portion.
yeah, but it's up here that this land, this property is this one up here, I believe.
Yeah, how does that relate to that?
I think this property is map 54-209, so it's the upper left corner of page 141. So it doesn't look like Orleans Road has been split up there at all. That portion of Orleans Road is still 3,000 square feet. Is that right?
That's correct.
No, so Orleans Road was split in 2015. It just hasn't been distributed yet.
Okay, it's just the plan on page 141 shows half of it cut, split, and then the other half north of that, not split.
But isn't that the whole, Stephen,
So-
are your clients are trying to buy both halves of the
Correct.
yard sale
There's
that abuts 29?
Right, the whole
Yeah,
3,000
yeah.
square
Yeah.
feet.
It
Yeah,
is,
correct.
it is split. It is split. They just want to buy,
They're just gonna buy.
they just
both.
want
Yeah.
to, they want to buy this and that, but
Yeah.
these people haven't bought that yet.
Yeah.
So,
Nobody's bought either yet.
No.
And they have rights.
Right.
First.
So
refusal,
my,
right?
my client would get the piece that is directly behind him and between him and Russell, and then would also become eligible for the piece that is next to
Oh.
Russell along the long strip. So if you look, my
Oh.
client is trying to
I
buy
see.
that triangle with a little, I think it's like a 2-foot strip, but because if we pick up that triangle with that 2-foot strip, we become eligible as a butter for half of that really long piece also. So there's two pieces that my client would come up with. So they would go from it's a total of 7,125 square feet of land that they would pick up.
And what do
from the
they have
town.
now? Let's see, right now.
What do they have now?
20, they have,
Right now, I have this
20,000.
all. Yeah.
what?
So it's a 20,000 square foot zoning district, and
I know, but why don't
the-
we have on the concept plan?
yeah, it'd be nice to
It's
have,
incomplete.
I think, is it this? It's this.
Okay.
I-
This? No, but it doesn't show the whole line plot. I
Right.
think it would be helpful to have a plan that shows the whole
I agree.
parcel as a surveyed proposed parcel.
I have a more, before we spend a
Sure.
lot of time on this, I have a more sort of baseline question. Stephen, can you explain why you're here before us now, before you have, because it seems like there are like several steps that need to happen before this can even
Sure.
happen, because at
So
this
the-
point, sorry, go ahead.
No, so there's two steps that need to happen. One of them is that my client would acquire the land from the Russells, and they have a contract to do that, but the contract relies on also acquiring the relief to use the town land, because you need to get credit for the ground cover for the town land, sorry, until it is then acquired privately. So if the zoning board were to grant relief, then my client would close on purchasing the land from the Russells, and then when the yard sale is ready, would close on purchasing the land from the town, and then would be compliant with zoning. They would go from a 20,000 square foot lot in 1 acre zoning to a 32,525 square foot lot in 40,000 square foot zoning. So
And
by
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, one of the advantages to doing this is it effectuates the lot becoming, 50% more compliant.
And
It's still not compliant, though.
Yeah, it would be 32,525 square feet instead of
How is
20.
that possible?
20,000.
It was 20,000, then they were adding 7,000 square feet. So where's the other?
From the
500?
town and 5,400 square feet from the private purchase.
Mhm.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And then the other question I had was for timing. What's the
Rush.
what's the rush on getting this triangle?
Well, the triangle we can close on immediately, but the problem is
But why?
because it's not. Why? What's the purpose of adding the land? What would they do with the ground cover? Is that the
No,
question?
no. I get that. Sorry. Why did they? You could close on it without the variance from us. Why make it contingent upon that? I mean,
Oh, because it's non-contiguous. So it's buying non-contiguous land doesn't get us anything without either acquiring the yard sale land or getting the credit to use that ground cover until it's acquired.
right. But it doesn't get you anything now, but it gets you something once you have the yard sale,
Right.
but you don't have the yard sale yet.
Correct.
I have a
But you
question.
could buy the triangle now. You don't need to have variance relief to buy the triangle.
That's correct. We don't need the variance
Okay.
relief to buy the triangle. We just
Right.
need the variance relief for it to be useful.
Right. But it will be useful once you get the yard sale.
Right. And so that's
There's no
exactly
question
the point is
about
that once we get the yard sale, we don't need relief. The relief is
Right.
to try to bridge the gap so that
I
there
have a
could
question.
be, yes.
Maybe I wasn't paying attention or I'm not getting it, but when, how long has your client been in line for, or how long has their application been in for the yard sale property to purchase that?
The town did the eminent domain taking in 2015,
Mhm.
and that we've just been waiting for that to happen since. And I don't know how much you know about this program, but there's quite a backlog of them.
So there's this person has an application in line waiting
At the land court.
at the land court presently?
It doesn't quite work that way. What happens is the town does, so someone has to ask, you generally ask the town to do this, which my client and other neighbors did. And then the town would file with the land court to clear the title, and then the town would do either distributions or RFPs, depending on the process it picks for each piece. But you can't actually apply for it. There is no application in that way. Once the town does the eminent domain, the town has to finish the process, and then
I
it
think
comes
that was
back
just
to
a
the
use of,
neighbors.
I think that was just a misnomer of
so-
the use of language. I think she just
Yeah.
meant like, how long has it
Yeah.
been waiting?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
how
so it's been
long-
waiting since, so the taking was in July of 2014, and I believe that the actual warrant articles that approved that were in 2013.
What is the accessory building used for? That you
It's intended to be a garage, not a dwelling.
It needs to be built? ASAP?
I mean, need is a,
Yeah. So unlike the other ones, I'm concerned, you don't have any official commitment from the town. But can the town reject selling or refuse to sell the property if it's that piece of it, if it turns into someone creating this lamb chop piece just to build a garage?
And
That
So
would be
I don't-
my concern, is that this isn't as,
You can't build a garage.
this isn't as straightforward as some of the others,
Yeah.
Stephen, that's all.
Yeah, would
So-
would this meet the zoning requirements for regularity? For the lot?
That's a question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know that you need to meet regularity to do an addition to an existing lot. The lot already meets regularity. I mean, or is previously not conforming, I should say. But adding to it has not generally been considered an issue.
Madam Chair.
And I should also say that the garage is intended to be built on Monomoy Road, not on the triangle on Brewster. And if the board wanted to put a restriction in place saying that we wouldn't build over there, that would be fine.
Well, I think that's kind of, it just, I mean, I get your the way that it works, you get the square footage and then you have the ability to do more, but it's creating a very irregular lot to be able to get this garage, I mean, it's like the people who own the one you're buying from, I can't read it, but
Russell?
what does it say? 14
Russell.
Brewster
Yep.
Road?
Yeah, Don.
Like those
Russell,
people,
yes.
they're not giving you 5,400 that's, contiguous to your lot. It's like way down the end in this weird triangle
Yeah.
that you're willing to say you won't build on. So it's,
I think that the hard part is, and I think you're trying to get to this, Susan, is you will not perceive the density that's going to be perceived on this lot that's only 20,000 square feet, irrespective of the other 12,000 you're going to add, is going to be very noticeable on a small lot. Nobody's going to make the connection that they own this flag
yes.
part. And so I think it's I just feel like it's a hard thing to give relief for at the moment because of.
I agree. Thank you. You said that better than I could.
Oh, Nikki's trying to get
Go
your
ahead,
attention.
Nikki.
Michael has comments. I just wanted you to know.
Okay, let's go to Michael.
Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. Question for Steve.
Yes.
Is there a good to date with your contract with the Russells?
No,
So it's open-ended.
well, it's not forever, but yeah. I mean, we're not, the Russells would like to get the deal done. So they're certainly flexible.
Because at this rate, you could be dealing with the successors to Russell.
Right, which is one of the reasons why they would like to get it done now, because it could be that the Russells were to sell later and the next people might not be cooperative. I mean, if that's your point, that's one of the concerns, is they'd like to try to lock in the terms that they can while they can.
But Stephen, to that, sorry, Michael, but Stephen, to that,
Go ahead, excuse me.
to that exact point that you and Michael just got to, if it's a successor of Russell, then that other portion or that portion of the yard sale, they might buy that.
So if you look at the way the land strip is drawn, my client would acquire all of the land that abuts Orleans Avenue so the Russells would not be the abutter at that point. They would have an interrupted.
So that's part of the deal of buying the triangle, is that they would be
Yes.
required to sell the other stuff.
Well, they wouldn't be required to it. They would be required to cooperate with it and not try to buy it or object to it or whatever. But technically, my client would be the direct abutter, and the Russells would have an interrupted connection because of the strip. Because my client's not buying just the triangle. There's that long tail that goes along with it.
Right.
Stephen, I have to tell you, I've got some big concerns on this one. And I'm going to put on my real estate assessment committee hat for a minute. I think the big concern that I have is that we don't see any binding agreement between your client and the Russells as it relates to Lot F and ostensibly the 5,400 square feet that they're buying.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's one. Two is that the Russells would need to, we haven't seen any agreement between the Russells and the town saying that the Russells don't want Lot F. They would, for this to happen at all, they would need to actively disclaim any interest that they have. Furthermore,
which I could definitely get you.
Sure, but furthermore, depending on the value of the square footage of Lot F, once it goes above $30,000, it becomes eligible for an RFP. Thereafter, anybody who would be abutting Lot F would have the rights to bid on the property. So it wouldn't necessarily go to the Russells if they actively disclaim it and it goes above $30,000. It could go to the folks over at 31. It could go to the folks over at 16. It could go to 27. It could go anyone else who touches Lot F in any way. So I think that's premature. If you tried to do it so that the Russells acquire Lot F and then convey to your client, I think you're going to run into a huge problem as well because of the deed restriction when the yard sale is disposed of. That any subdivision of the lot has to go in front of the select board. And I would imagine if the select board understands that this is part of a other land swap and that is for real dollars, either they may look for more money or they may not allow the subdivision to happen. I think the point is that you've got a lot of, and you said it on the outset, that you have a lot of, this is not straightforward. I think this one is incredibly premature. I think there are a lot of other steps that need to happen before the ZBA could consider granting a variance to, I mean, it has to be like a perfect storm of scenarios to acquire Lot F for your clients. And I don't see it yet.
So I appreciate you, and through you, Madam Chair, if I could respond to John. Everything you're saying, I think, is a good observation. Obviously, I could easily provide confirmation from the Russells that there's an agreement in place, and I could provide confirmation from the Russells that they would not contest the land going to my client, the Chomas. I also would tell you that what the intent would be is to have Choma acquire the land from the Russells before there was an RFP, if it went in that direction, and therefore, or even before the direct distribution, if it was in that direction, and therefore my client would directly acquire F as the abutter owning that triangle and the strip next to it. Because I agree with you that the language in the deed restriction that the town typically puts in would be problematic. But if my client owns the land on both sides and acquires lot F directly, we wouldn't have that issue.
As a practical matter, through you, Madam Chair, as a
Yeah.
practical matter, I think you're right. I think you still have a lot of steps to get to before that situation occurs.
So I hear what the board is saying, and I certainly don't want to cut off anybody if anybody else wants to comment or question. But what I'd like to do is take this feedback, go back to my clients, and also work with the yard sale program to see if I can get some more definition on when this might happen. Because perhaps if we were able to provide the board with greater assurances on that issue or a timeline on that issue, you might see your way to a conditioned approval. And I'm not asking for you to, confirm that. I'm just saying, you might have some more facts might be helpful.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Stephen. I think Arthur Reed has his hand up. Do you have a question, Jim, first for Steve, or?
No.
No. Okay.
Arthur?
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I represent Joanne Bennett, the owner of the adjacent property at 20 Moy. The whole situation of the yard sale on this, as has been pointed out in the questions raised by board members, is highly speculative. As noted, this has been pending for some years, and there are a lot of cases that have been pending for much longer than that in connection with these yard sales for various reasons, including the delays in the land court. And as John indicated, and of course he's on the Real Estate Assessment Committee, the process, once it comes out of the land court, will involve going through the REAC, which then will make a recommendation, and that recommendation may be positive or negative, or it may have conditions or twists attached to it, and then it goes before the select board. And not every case that has been brought before the select board has resulted in the issuance of the approval for the yard sale. There have been circumstances where that, for various reasons, has not been put through. And in this case, you're being asked for a variance. A variance, as you well know, requires a hardship related to the property, not the circumstances of the owner. And it is very hard to see how there could possibly be a hardship in this situation. The property at the present time, applicant's property, is a pre-existing non-conforming lot of record. It has an existing house on it. The plan that is in the application, assuming that that is still accurate, would indicate that there is still a reasonable amount of ground cover available on the lot. It shows as being 5% ground cover with 1,000 and if I can read it here, 1,011 square feet of ground cover, 1,500 square feet of ground cover being available for a lot of record. And therefore they've got another almost 400 square feet, which you can certainly build a garage in, that they could build on this property as it exists at the present time as a matter of right. Now, going back to the yard sale and an issue with all that, and of course, the fact that you've got this very strange circumstance of this triangular flag that would be added by the corridor in Orleans Road, as the applicant has proposed. Bear in mind that if the Russells do not elect to purchase the portion of Orleans Road that is adjacent to their property. Usually, the first preference is then given to the owner directly across the street on the other side of the road. And that would mean that there would be a section of the side of Orleans Road adjacent to the Russells that would be directly across from my client's property. And she, under those circumstances, would most assuredly want to acquire it. So this could play out in many different ways. As I say, it's completely speculative. If the applicant, and by the way, in terms of not building, any suggestion of not building on the triangular parcel down at the end, that's a discontinuous parcel. It's absolutely not buildable. It's an undersized lot that will be newly created, and no building on that lot under any circumstances could be permitted. So all in all, once again, you're being asked to give a variance that is not supported by any of the legal standards for a variance. There's no indication that there would be any benefit to the community for its issuance. And I would ask that you deny it. I have no objection to Mr. Cohen's request for a continuance to come back with additional information, but I can't really see any circumstances under which that would change the position of my client, or I would expect of yours. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Attorney Reed. Does anyone from the board have any questions either for Attorney Reed or Attorney Cohen?
Not at this point, but I do think when they come back, I think we have to have a proposed plan, because the colored plan that we got, the purple, Lisa just pointed out, doesn't match the shape of the triangle that's on the concept
141.
plan. So we don't really know what we're voting on, even if.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And it says the square footage is 5,400 square feet.
Right. So
The
I just think,
math
yeah.
isn't adding up.
So
Okay.
just having a proposed plan whenever they're ready would be
Okay.
helpful.
Okay, I appreciate the board's time. I obviously don't agree with Mr. Reed, but I'll say this all the time of doing that now and just try to move forward. So I'd like to ask the board to continue to the next meeting,
Jim, did you have something to say?
I just wanted to say there's enough of a cloud over this that if I were to vote for this, I don't think I'm going to be convinced at a later date. We're hearing there's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're going to rectify them, but I'd be more inclined to deny the request.
Well, okay. So the applicant has said he would work towards at least closing some of the loops, or at least giving us a better timeline. I think we can grant the continuance with the understanding that, or the possibility that if they don't come with enough, and these things we would have the ability to vote. And yeah, okay. So voting on this one, let's just go across. Let's see. Michael, are you around next month, or will you be doing Zoom again?
You're around. Well,
Or Zoom.
Maybe by Zoom.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. Who is? Let's see. All right, so does someone want to make a motion to continue on this one?
I'll make a motion
Okay.
to continue.
Second.
Till February 8th at this point, or are we going to do it further out?
The night.
More
What
time.
does Stephen
Yeah.
want to do?
Yeah.
Stephen,
How
do
much time do you need for your continuance?
Well, I'm sorry, what were the choices? February or March? Is that
Well, no, I'm just asking you when
Yeah.
you'd want to continue until
the next regular meeting?
February?
8th?
Okay, I guess the 9th.
9th, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay. So I'm going to start with Elisa, since you made the motion or seconded it. We'll do roll call. So Elisa,
Aye.
Lisa, myself, I, John,
Aye.
and Jim.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, who's your fifth member?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lisa, Elisa, me, John, and
Oh.
Jim. I just went. Next we have 2122 14 Starbuck Road. Linda Williams presenting.
Want to nail down who my board is. It was John, Susan, Lisa, Michael O'Mara, and Elisa. Does that sound right?
Well,
This
is new business, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I have to do a draft, I just want to make sure I know. who's saying.
So we'll have, who are regular members at this point? And
And Michael.
Are you regular? Are you?
Since I subbed for Ed, I think I took over his spot as a regular
Yeah.
member.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
also.
So I'm just trying to think. I think the procedure is am I supposed to do regulars with alternates?
Yeah.
I think you should do the regular members.
So
unless
then-
one of them has a conflict or can't.
Right. So I have Michael, Mark, are you alternate or are you regular? Alternate. Okay. That's what I thought. Lisa is regular, Lisa, regular.
John and
me,
Michael.
John, and then Jim, you're regular, right? Or are you alternate?
No.
Oh, you're alternate as well. Okay. Okay. So then this board will be Michael, Elisa, Lisa, myself, and John Brusher.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Got it.
So Jim, Montani, and Mark Poor alternate. Okay.
Ready?
Ready.
For the record, Linda Williams representing the applicants. This didn't have to come before you, even when they instituted the VR ban on pools without a special permit. Up until this was sort of thrown at us last year at town meeting, people didn't really realize that the spas were involved, especially a real spa. It is only 8 by 12 and 3.5 feet deep. It is a spa. We don't see too many, but it is a spa. They were exempt from having to come here in the VR until last town meeting. And people really didn't realize it had to come here until we fleshed this out a couple months ago in the office. The HCC approved it a year ago. I gave you the minutes in the addendum. Says this is approvable due to lack of visibility, and I emphasize that by underlining it and putting it in bold. But it is in the back of the structures. You have the approvals there. You have the aerials. You have the views, the pictures from the road. It's quite a great distance away from anybody in the back. The spa is actually located further back on the lot than either abutter, who are several feet away. And there's really not much more to say to this because there's not a lot involved with these spas, except that it's a spa. You go in, you sit down, and that's about the end of it. So
Where's
and
the
I did
depth now,
include
then?
all the normal conditions, but as I said in my addendum, these are a case-by-case basis when you're dealing with a spa. It doesn't engender an awful lot of the conditions related to full-fledged pools that are 4 times the size of this spa and much deeper. So I don't know how much of the A through H you want to include, if anything, because it actually is a spa.
Oh, that's just a spa.
Yeah.
I think we
12 by
could.
8.
We can look at the conditions and make them if applicable.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to do. I just couldn't flesh them out myself.
If we as a board want to do that, I mean,
So it meets all the requirements that a pool would have had to have met, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the
Mhm.
setbacks and equipment locations.
And the
Right.
size of the lot and everything.
Yeah.
If we note the depth on the conditions, that
Oh,
they're
yeah,
proposing.
absolutely.
There's no depth listed, so I think we should
Mhm.
show it. We
Yeah,
should
condition
list
it on the HCC approval and the 8 by 12 and 3.5 feet deep.
Is on that.
I think it's in their rendering.
I don't see it
It's
on
in
the
the rendering.
It's in the rendering.
Where?
I didn't see the, I mean, maybe. I didn't see the depth, then I might have missed it.
I don't see the,
Did? I thought it just said straw.
Madam Chair, Michael has comments.
okay, Michael, go ahead.
It's a question for you or Mickey or Billy, if he's there. Did the town throw in the maximum gallonage to that article?
Not for spas.
In the, I think the question was for Billy or Leslie.
I'm not sure he's got it.
There's not a maximum gallonage. I am working on an article for the planning board that will be heard at their January 26th meeting, which completely changes the way pools and spas are treated and clarity. So that's coming, but we don't have that yet. And that article does not include gallonage, but it changes the surface area and creates some new categories.
Thank you, and pardon me for not recognizing you. You're hiding over there in the corner on my screen.
Madam Chair, would you like to take public comment now? No.
Whenever
you're ready.
Do we have it? Are we still discussing the, I don't see the depth listed on anything.
It's only in the addendum, so we could just have it put on the drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
that is a condition for sure.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else for Linda right now, or should we go to public comment?
It doesn't need to be fenced. It has a pool cover. Does it have a pool? cover?
Yes.
And it doesn't need to be fenced either way. It doesn't even need a pool.
Okay.
It just is a spa.
There are additional comments from the
Excuse me.
Independent Application Review Committee.
This is the sheet.
additional requests.
And I haven't seen those, so I don't know. I reserve the right to respond to it, but I haven't seen them.
Okay.
Because I was the chairman of the Nantucket Advisory and it doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore.
It mentions pool covers are not appropriate substitute for fence.
Well, it's the bylaw.
Do we want to hear from the public?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that and then we can talk about conditions.
Okay, Susanna and Emmett Sheehan, you may go ahead.
Hi, I'm Susanna Sheehan and my husband Emmett is with me. We're owners of 54 Starbuck at 54R, which if you see on one of the plans submitted with the application is a vacant piece of land. We just have a couple quick questions and one comment. Just to be clear, is this a hot tub?
Yes,
Okay, is it in ground or above ground?
above ground on the patio. It's 3.5 feet deep.
No, but it's
But
in
it's
ground. It's sunken into the
recessed
ground. It's not standing on top of the ground.
I can't, you'll have to take a look at that to actually ascertain whether it's above ground.
It
I thought
doesn't
it was
say.
sitting
It-
just on the patio.
It doesn't
It looked
say.
like it was recessed to me.
If it's recessed, it's recessed. It's in the patio.
What
I
does
know
it say on
that.
the HDC approval?
Yeah, like you're gonna walk and step down
Step
into it,
down.
not step up into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's recessed,
So it's
okay.
built actually into it.
It's built like a small pool, essentially. There's nothing in the drawings that show that. No cross section.
Yeah, I didn't do the application to the HDC, so.
So do we want to see that? We want to see the depth and we want to see a cross.
That we're approving it. as
Recess,
in-ground
in ground.
spa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Deck should be sized here and it should have been approved with this application and it wasn't.
Okay, sorry, there's a lot of comments. Mark, what's your comment?
My comment is on the HDC certificate of appropriateness. They check deck, but they don't put any kind of size on it. So I don't think the deck was addressed.
The deck, that
As-
stuff
as
was there.
part of
Linda,
this.
let him finish. So you're saying you don't think the deck was
I'd
approved?
have to look at the HDC minutes again to see if it talks about the deck.
It doesn't because
Page
the deck is part of
163,
the
It
house
says proposed.
application, not this.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah. They lifted it and put a foundation underneath it and there was a lot of construction on it. So that was all part of the house.
Proposed 12 by 8 spa
Decking with.
in
Then I
not
wouldn't
to
have
weather
checked deck
decking
on the
with
application.
stone.
Yeah, well, it's a patio
I-
deck.
yeah.
It's in the ground.
If the deck was part of the permitting for the house, no reason to check deck on the certificate of appropriateness for the spot.
Well, again, I didn't do that
Right,
part of it.
I understand.
But I
Did they
think
give you a
that
height on there, Mark?
our presumption is
No.
that it's in ground flush with the deck,
Okay.
Okay.
and that's how it would be approved.
Okay. Okay, can we go back to the neighbor? Okay, go ahead.
So it is in the it is in the ground.
It's
Oh.
in, it's in the deck, like the decking and the
Flush with
pool,
grade.
Okay.
right, flush with grade.
Terrific.
Okay, and the only comment I would have about this, about the spa, is basically the exterior lighting, even though it looks on the plan that the houses are separated by open space, you can see all the houses, like we can see that house from our property. And what's most important is this exterior lighting. It says in number D that it should be turned off by 10 PM to be downlit, and that there will be no exterior lighting. I would really like the record to reflect that that's what is going to happen. Thank you.
Can I respond to that really
Wait,
quickly?
what was, where
was the
were
comment D
you?
and E.
I think they're looking at the
Oh,
conditions.
D, okay, I thought you said B, okay, yes, D.
D
and E.
and the addendum, there's a line in the third paragraph, last sentence, almost.
Yeah.
I believe that's related to the spa. We're not putting any more, no lighting in the spa
Okay.
related to the spa, but obviously they're going to have a light on the outside of their French doors. But it's not related to the spa use. So there's no lighting no additional lighting relating to the spa use.
And the lighting on the French doors would be conforming to the bylaws about downlighting.
They have to be.
Yes, any lighting has to be in compliance with the bylaw.
Yeah.
And then in addition, the applicant is saying that there's no additional lighting that is being added because of the spa.
Right.
And does a spa, we talked about this with the pool, that pools require some safety light.
Typically wanted one, but if there is one in there,
There usually is. a light
I've seen
within
lights
it.
in a spa. I just
Yeah.
don't know if it's required for safety or some of them are for
I don't know.
aesthetics.
I know I've been in a spa without a light, but I'm not sure about the code requirement for a spa that's only 3.5 feet
Okay,
deep.
so,
I think it's a
but you're
depth
saying
thing.
there's no additional lighting, so we would say there's no aesthetic lighting, only safety lighting.
Right.
As may be required
I
for
think
the
that's a better
spa.
language. We tried to come up with that the last time.
Lighting. Yeah.
No.
Okay,
I mean, you have to have a light in the jacuzzi.
I think
right,
there's
so
a
we can
depth
say as
issue.
may be required for safety.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where is the pool equipment or the spa equipment going?
It's on the. With a 4-foot fence around it, natural to weather.
Yeah, it's up against the basement stairs.
Yeah.
No, the 5 by 10.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of pool equipment versus a pool.
Yeah.
There's no vacuum break. There's certain other things that don't have to be required.
Did everyone get a chance to read the email from Bruce Mandel?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the public at this time?
This is a pretty simple one.
Nikki, is there anything else from? That's okay.
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay.
So can we clarify, is there going to be a pool cover, automatic pool cover allowed on this or not?
It's not an automatic pool
Are
cover.
there
because
auto-
it's
Just a
spa.
manual?
It's just, here's your cover for the
Okay.
winter.
Okay.
I mean, like every other spa in Nantucket, you
Okay.
pick it up,
Usually
you
they're
move it off.
insulated covers, aren't they?
Yeah, they're
Sometimes
insulated
they're
covers.
under the coping and they're
Yeah, you can
automatic.
Shoot up.
They don't really have coping either.
It says
The
auto
HTC
cover, and then
application
over
says
here
auto
it
cover.
says none, so I just want to be clear.
They don't usually, they're not the covers like we put on pools that are automatic covers.
Okay.
Which have an
They
entire
don't say
apparatus
cover
involved.
should require you to
Automatic
not
pool
have a
covers are-
fence.
okay,
There's
yeah.
multiple
We just
of
pick
them.
it up and put it
Got
on.
it.
Now, Bruce Mandel is requesting mechanical equipment associated with the pool shall be enclosed in a soundproof enclosure with a roof.
We don't, you can't do that with a roof. So that's why they have all the pool equipments everywhere on the island to have fences around them.
Have we put that into the requirement before?
No,
I'm asking Susan, but
Didn't we? Michael,
be
what was
awkward
the
because
application we were talking about? Maybe, guys, Michael, what was the, maybe you remember, because I think it was you that brought it up. What was the application we were talking about that, we talked about some kind of like noise canceling? Like,
That's correct. And
what was
and
that
it-
for? Was that for pool equipment or was that for
well,
air
it was-
conditioning?
it was For pumps for the pool, but I'm sure that that's available for a spa as well. When the heater for this is going to be going, I don't know exactly when it's not in use, what the temperature would be, but it's probably be somewhere just below 100. And it's gonna be on quite a bit. So you also, I believe, need an insulated cover.
Mhm, mhm.
So ideally, I would think that the best cover and the safest cover for child protection be an automatic cover that's insulated.
well, that's the pool. That's not the pool equipment.
But
No, I'm
you're,
talking
but
about
you're,
the spa.
your spa, I know.
Yeah,
Well,
but the
there's
pool
two things.
equipment
We're
is
talking about
different.
two different things. One
Yeah.
is your HCC certificate of appropriateness approves a spa with an auto cover.
Fine. Either way.
Two, the other thing is you're saying that you can't put equipment in something with a roof, but we've discussed it before and you can. It's like some kind of noise reducing. I've talked about the brand name at some point.
I can't go brand names and you
No,
can't.
no, I'm not
but-
either. I'm saying we discussed we
Okay.
brought up a brand name. I'm not going to dictate what
I've
product you
done
use.
quite a lot of pools and none of them have anything more than the 4-foot fence. And again, this is spa equipment, not a pool equipment. So it's a little bit of a different design on the pool equipment side or the
Mhm.
spa equipment. And it's surrounded by a 4-foot fence. We can put sound deadening board on the inside of it, but that's a little excessive given it's a spa and not a full-fledged pool. And I haven't done any sound deadening on 51 Tennessee or any of the other ones that I've done. The one down the street from Starbuck. So this is actually a spa with much less intense equipment. And the equipment isn't even as tall as the 4-foot fence.
Mhm.
So I'm saying this is particular to this subject. Now, granted, I've done them years ago. I've done pool equipment surrounded by a 4-foot fence with sound deadening board inside it because the neighbors were a lot closer before they changed the bylaw on the R5s, ROH, and R1s, which traditionally are in smaller lots, 5,000 square foot lots, not 23,000 square foot lots, and not 100 feet apart from the neighbor. So there's a big difference in this particular case, which is why I said make it particular to a case by case when you're dealing with these spas now, which are not full-fledged party pools. They're not 20 by 40, which a lot of these pools are coming through now. So I don't want to get crazed on a spa with less intense equipment that's already being surrounded by a 4-foot fence. But if I have to do anything else, I'll put sound deadening inside the fence, but it's a solid fence, not with gaps. It's a solid vertical board fence.
Okay, so again, my question is, Michael, do you remember what I was talking about with those?
I do.
And
I
wasn't it for a pool?
It
or was
was,
it for-
it was for a pool, but my point was that a spa, the equipment that's used in a spa is typically louder than a pool. And they make efficient pumps for pools And I'm sure they make efficient blowers for spas. And
The
not
difference with-
knowing how far away the neighbors are,
They'll just want it for themselves.
if I knew, it might be a little easier to make this decision.
It's in the thing. I wrote it down and put it on a plan, but
The dimension to the neighbor.
we're on a 23,000 square foot lot, and so are they. And the neighbor that was here earlier, the two neighbors on either side have not spoken up at all about this. There's nothing in the file from either abutter, the direct abutters, east or west, or northeast and southwest. The abutter that's on the thing now is on the backside. If you look at your aerials, they're on fronting on the where Starbuck goes around and comes back around the corner again. They are the farthest away from this item. And there's substantial ground between them and this. I know they can see the house now because they picked it up, and put it down. But as far as the equipment is concerned, the most direct neighbor to the equipment on the northeast, I believe, has said nothing.
Okay, so you're saying, you're saying that it's going to be a solid vertical board with no gaps fence, and you're
That's right.
willing to put the sound deadening in it.
If we have to.
Okay.
I haven't done it with any other pool yet, but we have to. We can hide it in there where the HCC can't see it.
Okay. And are you willing to do the noise efficient blower?
Sure.
Okay. And then I have one question about, and I don't think we touched on this, but maybe we did. The pool, one of the conditions that we usually do is the spa shall not be chemically treated between November 1st and May 1st of any given year, but because it's a hot tub, presumably it's going to be used during those winter
Stroll or
months.
stroll or
So,
whatever, yeah.
and is it going to be, will it be drained at all?
I don't know. I doubt it. But if it is drained, obviously we follow the same rules that we do for the pools, because it is chemically treated. And you can't release that into the aquifer, especially that close to the beach where the plume runs north to south. So they would have to have it professionally drained. So I wasn't
So I
questioning
think,
those.
right, so I think condition C probably does not apply here.
Yeah.
Because it's, a hot tub's meant to be used obviously during the cooler months. So maybe, what do you guys feel about striking C, because
That's-
it
it's
doesn't.
reasonable.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense in
I get
this context. Michael, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I just wanted to mention again that there's an extra piece of equipment on a spa, and there's a blower and a pump. And they make, I believe they make sound deadening or the decibel improving for both the pump and the blower.
Okay.
That would be, let's put it in C, because there's a blank C now. We'll just stick that up there in C.
Okay. What was that? Okay. Okay.
And what about E, since there is no exterior pool lighting?
So I wrote something saying,
except for the safety.
no aesthetic lighting, only safety lighting as may be required by law for the
Yep.
tub. Whatever
Does
it
that
is.
combine D and E, or I would get rid of D and just go with E, make ED with what you just said.
Well, I think the thing about having it shut off by 10 PM might not be bad to keep in there.
Yeah, I think there would be,
That means
I
they
would
can't
think
use it.
we would change D based on your representation that there shall be no exterior lighting related specifically to the pool, to
Yep.
the spa, other than,
The safety.
and yeah, any other than safety lighting and any outdoor lighting shall comply with the provisions of chapter 102.
Yeah, and get rid of the 10 o'clock, because doesn't really apply to
Because
this.
number 2 on the back of Bruce Mandel's refers to the underwater pool lighting.
Again,
That's I think we determined before we couldn't
yeah.
do anything about safety, like if the.
No, that's good.
And you
Yeah.
guys have said that to
I
him
just don't wanna be
directly.
redundant, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't want to
Yeah.
say it in one place and.
He'll keep saying it.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, sorry. So we have someone from the public who wanted to speak. Who's that?
Sheehan?
Yes, Emmett Sheehan, 54 Starbuck. Just two questions. I'm actually in the business of putting pools and all of this in, ironically. So HDC, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you said the appropriateness said it needs an auto pool cover? Is that
That's what they
correct?
applied for.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what the application that was approved was for a 12x8 spa with an auto cover.
Yeah.
And that will occur?
Yeah.
Okay.
They have to, that's what the HCC approved.
Right. Correct. Well, that was it. So this is a mini little gunite pool with the equipment versus the equipment off to the side versus a fiberglass hot tub buried in the ground. Is that the gist of it?
I can't talk to you about the construction of this thing. I assume it's a modular construction. If not, they'll have to pour it. It's hard to get around to the back of the house like that with a.
But the pool, so I guess what I heard the question is that the pool equipment is not going to be right
It
up.
says gunite on the HTC
Yeah, then they're gonna have to
application.
spray it
Okay, but the pool equipment is
over there.
for the plan, as shown on the plan, right, is over by the
Exterior stairs.
exterior stairs,
Yep.
not next to the hot tub.
Right. And away from their side of the abutting property.
So to sum it up, we feel fine with this, the way that you're putting the limitations on it with the lighting and the auto pool cover. I think it'll be safe. It'll be closed. So
And I just want to applaud the willingness to go with a quiet blower pump and insulated fence. We may not be the closest abutter, but I do know that noise, it's a very quiet area. It's a very flat area. There's no trees, there's, scrubs. There's really nothing to block noise. So we don't know what we don't know at this point. And it would be wonderful to go with this quieter blower and pump. So it's not something we have to hear all the time because it is a really quiet area.
And as far as homes being close, so at the edge of our property, even further out, we are very close. I actually have 3 chairs and a little table. We actually go sit out there and have a glass of wine. So our home is physically not, but we have a mowed area, a maintained area that we do go sit out there and quietly watch the sunset. But we think it's terrific if they abide by all your rules.
They will. They put as you know, they put a lot of effort into rehabbing this house and picking it up and putting it back down and landscaping and everything else. So they're a responsible owner as far as I can tell.
The area is changing. It used to be really
Yeah.
quiet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So it looks like we've gone over all of the conditions that we usually do. We've made a few adjustments to make them more applicable for a spa versus the pool and to this specific application. So Linda, just to the differences, we got rid of C, the reference to the HDC application in the concept plan, that includes the auto cover, the solid vertical board fencing with no gaps and sound deadening.
4 foot high.
4 foot high.
Yep.
And then noise efficient blower and pump or decibel improving, whatever we want to call it. And that we can massage the language for the lighting, but just basically that there's no additional exterior lighting specifically related to the spa. And
except for
there's no aesthetic lighting except for any safety lighting as
related to the spa.
required. Yep.
Got it. So you may drop down from H, you may be down to F or G by the time they finish massaging. this.
However, I mean, as long as the substance is there, it doesn't really matter about the letters.
And then it's 8 by 10, 8 by 12, 3.5 feet deep.
Yep, and that will be 8
In
by
ground,
12.
in ground.
8 by 12.
Flush with grade.
3.5.
Well, there's a lip to it,
Yeah.
but it's flush with.
Right,
grade.
flush with deck. Okay.
Where was the note that it needs to be or maybe they didn't do it because it was a spa, permanently not visible.
They didn't do it because it's not visible. So they just said it's behind the house and for HCC purposes from the road, you can't see it. So they leave that out when they can't see it.
Okay.
I mean, they know they can't see it.
Said it was not visible.
Yeah, I thought I saw.
Usually it's that with a pool, but not with the spas.
Yes, Jim?
Madam Chair, there are a couple other items that Mr. Mandel
Okay.
requested that we haven't
Sure.
addressed.
You want to go, what?
The vegetation,
Right.
which I think is important. I don't know if you're removing any or,
It's behind the house. The HCC did not require the vegetation, period.
okay, this just says if anything was removed, any mature.
We can't go
vegetation
there
was
because they
replaced.
did clear a lot of the lot. He's bringing the same things up all the time. But when it's behind the house, the HCC has no jurisdiction or requirement for the screening.
But we
And
can
they did-
require
They do a
screening.
lot of landscaping because they had to get in there with the machinery to pick up the thing.
But
So
we
it's
can,
not relevant to this.
for the HCC, but zoning board in the past has required screening.
When you can maybe see it, but because it's directly behind the house, you cannot see it,
We
which is
usually
why
just
we didn't do the screening.
Around parking and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And they're
I
putting,
don't
they don't want to
see
be
why we
seen
should
either from the road, so they're putting their landscape back.
Well, we usually do require, and we have required in the past, for pools, the landscape plan. So even if we, we have, so there, I know this is in the deck, but it would be helpful to see, or at least have some understanding from the applicant what the plan is.
Look at the pictures, all that's going back after they got the heavy equipment out.
Where do you mean, look at the pictures?
Look at all the photographs show you what the landscaping is.
Are you like page 163?
I don't know what numbers they are, but all the
158.
pictures in there are from
170?
the house, the side of the house, the deck hides the back, because the deck is a side back deck, not a rear deck.
Oh, I
You
see.
see all the pictures. It's set back way off the road behind the house. So that's why no screening is necessary. Why the HCC, who normally
Right, but we're
requires
not
screening,
talking
is not
about
there.
HGC right now, Linda.
I know, but that's why there was no mention
It
of it.
doesn't seem, I mean, it seems like, I think what we've required it before, it's been in areas where there was that one sort of weird triangular lot
Mm-hmm.
where they had actually cut into this,
Right.
the screening a bit. And we just wanted to make sure that the property wasn't going to get cut up to the property lines, which I don't see why these people would ever want to do that. but-
Well, we can just say, I mean, this plan shows all this existing vegetation. So
Yeah,
we
it
can
does.
just say that there's no, it's the vegetate, oh my gosh.
Vegetative
The
buffer.
existing vegetation as shown on the HDC approved plan will remain.
Right. You are tagging this to the HDC approved plan.
I know, just to be clear. And also just, in that way where it's not changing anything, but it's, giving peace of mind to the concerns from the neighborhood. So,
Well, East and West said nothing, so I was really surprised, but there you go.
okay. well,
But he's going to
Okay.
say the same thing on every single one,
I know.
even if it's a 2x2,
Mm-hmm.
put your toe in it.
And again, Linda, what you just said was if we could
Particularize it.
tailor the conditions to this particular situation. And so you're giving us a plan that shows a ton of existing vegetation.
Yep.
So if we just say
Per
this
the
ex-
HCC plan.
the
and leave it
the
there.
existing vegetation isn't going to change, then you're without giving anything or doing anything additional, you're satisfying a concern.
Up
of a
to
neighbor-
that
of the
point,
neighbor.
but if we want to replant or do something on the roadside,
But we're
that's
not-
beyond the
we're
scope.
not- We're not
So I
saying,
want to say that.
Linda, we're not saying that. This plan shows all this existing vegetation and vegetation here. So we're not I don't think we're asking.
Okay. I
Unless
just don't want-
another
if we
board
take a
member has
tree
an
out,
issue.
I want to make sure he's not coming after us for taking a tree out and replanting it.
If it's shown on this plan, you're fine. That's what you just said, that it's on
Yeah.
the plan. Okay. And what was the other one, Jim, that we didn't address yet?
We did number 2.
Yeah.
One of his things, we did this on another property. I don't know if it applies here, is this regrading.
Oh,
No.
for the road?
Road.
If
I don't
they,
think-
That's not.
that
that's
was,
outside.
Linda, hold on a second. So that was for the application, I think, where the people had they had like cut an extra access to
Yeah.
a dirt road behind.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
no, it was on.
No,
M
that's
Street.
right. It
Is that
doesn't
right?
apply to this, though, I don't think.
That doesn't apply to this.
Right, that was
That
where they
was
were
an
using it for
access.
construction. Oh, no, I
Construction
was talking about a
access.
different one, but yes,
Yeah.
it was for construction access.
And
we
then
said
to
when they were done to
revegetate, when they're
revegetate.
done.
But that's
with
not what's
conditions.
happening
No,
here.
and that's only if
correct?
they have actual access onto
Right.
two roads. They don't.
Okay, so that one's not really, so 2, 3, where they're doing the automatic pool cover, that's allowed by law. And these, so they're not doing anything with the road? No, so we don't have to.
They're not
do
required
that.
to. And
Okay,
it's outside the lot line. The planning board can do it if they got a secondary dwelling.
okay. Anything else, Jim, that you saw that?
And then there's
Mr.
number 5, sorry.
Yeah, which we could probably incorporate the other the other number or letter that
Well, it
addresses lighting.
says, yeah, I mean, it says, I don't think we haven't required that in the past, and they are required to do the downlit, they are required to meet the lighting bylaw, so
Yeah. And you've got it in
including
here.
a complete photometric plan. They've already said they're not doing any
covered.
additional lighting, so it is
Yeah.
covered, but I
We don't
think
have
that
any
that has
landscape
been
lighting.
important we have had a more detailed lighting plan when there's been a lighting proposal and there's not a lighting
Right,
proposal
and
here.
like Linda just said, landscape lighting, should we include the word landscape lighting? No additional landscape lighting in that area in there?
Well,
as
we did when we said nothing related to that thing. You don't have any jurisdiction over if he wants to light his bush up. If he's any additional lighting related to the spa, that's landscape lighting you've already prohibited that. So
Mhm.
no extra landscape lighting related to the spa.
Right.
But when you go
right.
beyond the spa lighting, then you get into territory that's not before you.
Right,
Just
we're just saying there's no additional, you're not proposing any additional.
nothing related to the
exterior
spa.
lighting.
I don't expect they'll get in it until November.
Hmm.
I don't want to be in 100-degree spa in August. I'll go jump in the ocean.
Okay,
So I've got them listed.
okay. Is there anyone else, Nikki? No. Does anyone have any other comments or questions or revisions for the conditions for Linda? Okay, would
No.
anyone like to make a motion on this one then? And voting on this is Michael, Elisa, Lisa, myself, and John Brusher.
I will make a motion. to approve it with the conditions as discussed.
Okay.
Second.
Who seconded that?
I think Michael.
I think Michael did.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so of the regular members, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, so
Do-
that,
Should we do roll call vote?
You
for
oh
should,
yeah,
'cause
sure.
Michael's
Okay,
up there.
so Michael,
Aye.
Elisa,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
myself, I, and John.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank
so
you
that-
very much, guys. Happy
Yeah.
New Year.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year.
I'm still looking for last Memorial Day, so I don't know how we got here.
I know.
We need Linda here to discuss these.
Um,
Okay.
all right, so that concludes this section of the meeting. What? Yes, we are doing that, but I think so for other business or for Zoom purposes, obviously we want to keep Michael on, and then does Nikki just end the Zoom for everyone else, and do we end the recording, or do we talk other business on the tape?
Other business stays on the video.
Okay,
You would just, it would just be for board members, no public comment.
okay.
I mean, you can always take public comment if you want to, but
Okay, but people
not a
can,
public hearing.
people can hang in and listen if they want to. Okay. Okay, so then do we need to close the public hearing portion of the meeting to move into other business?
no.
Okay, then we're going to move into other business.
Just need I have too many windows open here.
So, page 175 is the start of the other business. We're going to talk about the proposed warrant articles that impact or may impact zoning. Leslie, do you
me
want
to
to?
just run through these real quick?
Yeah. And Billy, did you print out the when we talked the other day, you were going to print out the warrant, the way they were printed for the warrant for us? No,
I don't know, but.
it's okay. We'll just go through them.
And I think we have time because some of these aren't going to get closed tonight at the planning board. So,
okay.
All right.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Bruce Mendel has his hand raised, but I know you already, we finished that.
Yeah, we've already
matter, but he
done
just
that.
raised his hand. So wait till after, because I'm not sure what.
Yeah, if it's public comment about the zoning articles,
Yeah.
but we've already.
This is really just for you all to know what's going on in front of
Yeah.
the planning board.
Well,
If you wanna make
I'm
any
assuming Bruce has a
recommendations.
comment about the pools is what I'm assuming.
Yeah, I don't think it's very timely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just raised his hand. So
Yeah, I think,
And we need to run through this quickly
Yeah.
because we have planning board at 4.
okay, so,
Okay,
we
so,
have to
sorry,
staff
so we'll
that.
just,
We can
yeah, we'll
move
have to,
forward.
yeah, okay, so go ahead.
Okay, so on, in your packet, starting on page 176, we just included for your reference, a chart that was put together by town council of all of the citizen warrant articles and an article description in his comments. So some of these don't have anything to do with zoning whatsoever, but we just thought we'd provide it to you. So on page 178, number 8, that's a bylaw amendment. Again, these are all citizen petition articles. So this is a bylaw amendment proposed by Campbell Sutton to change the requirements for residential swimming pools. She, in her proposal, would change the side and rear yard setbacks in the, I don't have the actual article open, but I believe it's in the R10, SR10, R20, SR20, and R40 districts, from whatever they are in those districts up to 10 feet or up to 20 feet. So that doesn't directly affect your jurisdiction, but if that were to be approved, if someone couldn't meet those requirements, they would be coming to you for a variance. So
What's the
For
current,
the setbacks.
what's the current setback requirements?
in R20 and SR20, I believe it's 10 feet on the side and rear. I think it's the same in R10 and R40. I don't know.
So unlike the special permit that's required, like in the VR, this would become by right if you can meet 20 feet.
Right.
And would that apply to the VR zone?
We just open.
Just an R, okay.
Because of the VR already has its own requirements.
Right.
Just get that done.
So, is the planning board looking for a recommendation either way from us, or is this one's just informational?
They didn't ask me to come to you and ask you for recommendations. I just thought, since I'm staffing your board and these will affect your review, that you may want to provide some sort of recommendation. I'm just trying to find her article, the actual text of it.
I'm certainly not against having more of a setback for swimming pools.
I mean, one thing to think about with this, and I don't think this is going to be fully vetted at the planning board tonight. I think it will get continued just because I believe they want some additional information. But this would apply a setback to some of the smaller districts that's the same as the setback in like some of the lug districts. So
It seems like it's kind of end run around pools in the smaller
Yeah.
districts.
I think the way I look at it is if it were passed, we'd probably have a lot more variance work before us, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's the impact.
So that's,
I don't see it as a hardship.
Well, let's see
Right.
what the
Well,
planning
yeah,
board does. We'll
right.
circle back on this one because I think I did read the bigger description of it, right? And I think it needed more work or more information. So let's come back to that one.
all right, so that's that one. On page 6, excuse me, not 6, on page 181, number 16, an article proposed by Linda Williams, also about residential swimming pools. And her proposal is to keep the existing regulation, but to change the special permit granting authority from the zoning board to the planning board.
I'm all for it. No,
So-
I've always kind of wondered, and I know we've had you in here when we initially got this, like, it seems like it's outside of the scope of what we do, so we end up just
Doing
as
it
we
all the
did,
time.
trying to figure out, learn about pools and I don't know if the planning board is better at it. Seems like they're more equipped and they deal with it more often. They might not want the extra work.
I don't think it was
I've always
about-
felt like this wasn't, within our.
I don't think it's about extra work for the planning board, but this would be, when the planning board put the original zoning article together to create the VR district, they determined that the special permit granting group would be the zoning board. So then it's like
we're passing
redoing
it back
and
to
then putting it back onto them.
But don't they do all other districts?
No.
Where,
No.
oh, they don't?
That's the only.
No, it's the
district
only
that
one that
needs a
needs
special
one.
permit.
Yeah, and then the
Oh,
pool thing, I see planning, and planning seems, is more like
Bigger scope.
a bigger scope.
Yeah.
Whereas we, our board specifically deals with neighbors and what how things impact them. It's more, I feel the opposite. I think that the pool, the VR pool applications make sense coming to us versus going to planning that's dealing with broader issues.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I thought planning board has a jurisdiction over other pools. So I
No.
figured it makes sense to consolidate.
No,
The second question is, do we know why Linda is asking for this?
because
She likes to plan.
Is planning board a little less lenient?
A little
maybe?
more
I
lenient.
think she doesn't, I think Linda I think it's probably frustrating for her to come and have to have this same conversation about pools every time, which I understand. But that's why we've come up with this list of, the first few times it was a lot more detailed and a lot more. Now we have this list of conditions. And this one really, I think, was the one we had maybe more discussion than the last few ones because it was the spa, not a pool, and we had to sort of flush out what
Well,
that
and it was a
means.
complete plan. I mean, she has, in the
Yeah.
past, we get somewhat incomplete plans, so we have. a
And
lot
I
of
think
questions.
because it probably was frustrating and pushing back against having to provide all that, which I get, but maybe,
I'm
mean-
I'm ambivalent to it, but for what it's worth, I think the planning board is the default special permit granting authority other than pre-existing non-conforming uses. So no,
No.
really?
It's, the bylaw specifically says the zoning board is the special permit granting authority unless,
Otherwise?
yeah.
All right.
I think that's what these articles are trying to do, though, is create
Yeah.
that situation where the only thing that would, if all of these articles that are proposed, well,
And just by way of background, the special permit in the VR for swimming pools was a compromise because the residents, some of the residents in VR wanted to prohibit swimming pools altogether. And they weren't going to get support for that from the planning board. And so sort of the meat in the middle was the special permit. So that way, at least it wasn't a by right. And there were some additional criteria, which were, you have to meet or exceed the minimum lot size. You have to meet a higher standard for the setbacks. So that was, the planning board working with the area association to come up with something that, seemed maybe more reasonable than a straight out prohibition. The application that you all just discussed, the hot tub spa special permit, that came out of a citizen petition at last year's town meeting, and it didn't include any criteria. And it passed, I think by a single vote at town meeting. So it wasn't, maybe as vetted as it should have been. The planning board didn't support it.
So we adopted some of these restrictions based on, maybe it was Concom, but we got them from somewhere. So there's some other board that has.
Yeah, I can remember. I mean, about the filling of the emptying of the
Yeah.
pools.
That was
the
and-
Concom thing.
Yeah, I think
So
the
how
first
is
one that came
Concom
in.
just involved if there's a pool in the?
In their
No.
jurisdiction.
Yeah, but I think
Okay.
whoever was representing that came in
Okay.
with some
Mhm.
restrictions that the Concom puts on that seemed to make
Okay,
sense.
and that's why I thought that there was another board.
Mhm.
Just as an aside, I think, because we kind of stumble over things, because we all don't seem to be pool experts, but I don't know if it's worth having some type of special subgroup here to get to know what's available, what is reasonable.
Right.
Whether there are covered things that limit sound. Because I feel like we struggle with that.
Why don't we just have our boilerplate list of conditions that go along with a spa approval? And like you did today, we just edit them where necessary, but we also need to connect with HDC about this pool cover requirement or non-requirement. But maybe we just, when we get this type of application, we just apply our usual list, kind of like we did today, but
Yeah,
strike whatever
Yeah, but
isn't.
the-
I think what
list-
Jim's saying, and like
Talk about
we should,
equipment
yeah, I
and
think we should have, let's,
insulation
And maybe it
Leslie's
is
under a
just
time.
limited to equipment, but
Yeah.
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 I
Leslie's
noticed-
under a time crunch today to
Okay.
get to planning, but Jim, I do think that's a good idea. And if you want to try
Well,
to
Michael seems really knowledgeable.
knowledgeable. Well, I remember Jim, when we were doing about like, I forget what we was on like the 40B or whatever with the indigenous trees, like you were
Yeah.
really, you made an effort, which was great. So if you
Yeah.
feel like doing some pool research, that'd be great. So,
yeah.
so under 16, I think what I'm hearing from the board is that the recommendation from the ZBA to the planning board would be that the ZBA opposes the change proposed in this citizen article and supports the planning board's recommendation.
Okay, so the next one. On page 183-22, this is also sponsored by Ms. Williams. It's a zoning bylaw amendment to change the special permit allowance for frontage in commercial zoning districts to be reduced to 20 feet.
What is it now?
Right now, the zoning board is a special permit granting authority. She's proposing to change that to the planning board. This is something that rarely comes up. And I think in this case, the planning board does seem to make more sense because the planning board's already the special permit granting authority for
Mhm.
commercial.
And so they would have
And-
to do, the applicant would effectively, if this came up now,
Right.
they'd have to do 2 steps. They can
Right.
get it all done at planning, but
Yeah.
does anyone have any opposition to that or?
No.
Okay.
The next one, number 23, proposed by Ms. Williams, a bylaw amendment to, again, change the special permit granting authority from the zoning board to the planning board for the setback reduction. You guys have done quite a few of these in Shop, and I think I would recommend that this one stay with the zoning board.
I agree. This sort of
Totally agree.
falls to me the same as the pools. It's more localized or individual than a planning.
And then the next two, I was planning on going over these with you today, but there've been some developments, so I'd rather wait and talk about those with you at your next meeting.
Okay.
But those are proposed by Emily Molden. They would change the pre-existing non-conforming status of lots and structures created under the subdivision control, chapter 4181L. Right now, those lots and the structures they're on are given instant pre-existing non-conforming status as soon as the planning board signs the plan. And her articles would change that, but I think some other things are going to happen with these. So let's just wait on an in-depth discussion.
Okay.
When should we expect the quote unquote zoning corrections, Warren?
Well, that's done by
'Cause
general.
that to me is usually where we have the biggest issues, but.
So general code is our vendor. They're used by a lot of the municipalities in Massachusetts. And this year, the approval of the zoning articles, because of a technicality, and the approval of one of the general bylaw amendments was delayed. So therefore, the update of the code was delayed. It's usually updated around November. So I would think sometime soon, we'd see a new version.
Okay, and we're gonna see that draft.
Maybe we're talking about two different things.
Oh, maybe.
I was talking about the printed zoning bylaw with changes.
No, you know how you do I don't know if it's you,
corrections.
technical correction.
Yeah.
We don't have a technical corrections article this year.
Oh, come on.
No?
Oh,
Well,
great.
the things that
We
we
must
are
be
changing,
perfect.
no, not perfect. We put those into different articles. Some direction that we got from the Attorney General last year, despite several years of doing the technical correction article, was that we needed to separate those concepts out, that some of them were not so
No,
technical and
and
more
that's what I was
substantive.
suggesting.
Well, it was so
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah.
vote
So,
them all in as a group.
Yeah,
But
and
the-
you actually stood up. at
I
one.
stood up at one of them, yeah.
so the warrant may be adopted by the select board next Wednesday. The town manager said if not next Wednesday, the following Wednesday. So you'll see a final version soon. The planning board's holding their first public hearing just on citizen petition articles tonight. They're holding a hearing on the 26th for all the planning board sponsored articles. And then anything that needs to be wrapped up later will be done in February.
So I don't want to harp on these technical limits. So they'll be sprinkled into,
Separate
Planning.
articles.
okay.
And there's not a lot of them,
Okay.
just not a lot.
Okay. All right. Anyone have anything else for today? No. Okay, then would someone like?
I have,
Oh,
I
sorry,
have-
Michael.
He's on Florida time.
I just wanted to commend the great decision the Board of Selectmen made in our latest appointment to the board.
Oh, Thank you.
I agree.
Yeah, welcome back to zoning.
I know it's.
Absolutely. Love it.
Mhm.
Me too.
And on that note, motion to adjourn.
Okay, anyone second? Second. Okay, all those in favor say aye. What?
Uh,
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Aye.